at 6:30. And they were ready for us at 8:15. Sorry. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much to the ladies for being here. We have some friends that are here specifically today because they were at the Grand National Roaster Show last weekend. Would you just raise your hand if you're at that show and got the program? We welcome these guys over here, please. Now, there's one gentleman and his wife over here from Canada, and he does a car show at his church. So I said, we got to talk afterwards. He said, well, I came to talk to you. So anyway, we'll get together and talk a little bit. It's great. Listen, we want to just share them really briefly. I don't want to take Greg's time. There's a couple of programs on your table there that tell you about events that are coming up for men's ministry. One is called Man Style. We have men's Bible studies. It's a time to get together with other guys in the church. They meet different places, different times. And some people meet at home, some people meet at restaurants, some meet out in parking lots. So it'd be good for you to check this out. They have a wonderful group of guys. And also on here, I just had Tina throw this together to give you some ideas about what's coming up for men's ministries this year. I like to run men's ministry kind of like a Kiwanis Club. And I say that respectfully because groups like Kiwanis, those kind of guys, they like to do projects. They like to have things that they work for, they're going after. And you and I like to get our hands dirty. And I like to get my hands dirty too. Some of you guys in here are actual gearheads that know how to fix cars. I'm the kind of guy that buys that car from you when you're done. So Pastor Glenn's the same way. I mean, if you put the key and it doesn't turn, we're in trouble. But we thank you for what you do, and it's fun to have you here. So check out what we got going on here in men's ministries. Straight down to the guys worked the roaster show last weekend, selling the programs. We made $1,000 doing that. That money is going to go to a family or a project here in the Inland Empire area where we can help some people that have some special needs. And we work at those kind of things. We're going to have a barbecue here in June. That's a children's ministry barbecue, but the men cook the food. I don't. The men cook the food, and the funds that we raise from that also goes into that same pot, because that's our desire. My desire is for us to go out and help people do things that we can for them. We are going down, let's see, right here, February 19th, 20, first thing at the top. We're going to Riacomoto, Mexico in a couple weeks here to finish a house that we started to build down there for a family whose dad used to work up here in the States to make money for the family and send it back to them. And he went to visit back at home in Mexico, was coming back to the States, was killed in a car accident. He had nothing. So we are building a home for them. She makes tamales. What was it they wrap in the corn husks? There you go, tamales. She cooks and sells them right out of her house. So she has an income for the family. And we've been down there working. We were supposed to finish it a couple weeks ago, but because of the rains, they had 2 feet of mud literally in their yard. So we had to wait for that to dry out. At Matt Runge, Matt, will you just raise your hand? All right, this is Matt Runge. Matt's heads up that whole project down there. We're going down there. We've got room for a couple extra people. If you're a handyman, you're good with the hammer. Okay, I go because I'm the big mouth cheerleader. It's like, here we go, you know what I mean? I don't swing very many hammers. You will not see a picture with me and a hammer in my hand. And if you want the house to stay up. But if any of you are interested in that kind of stuff, Matt Runge is the man to see about that kind of stuff. And we will continue those projects. And plenty of other things that are coming up here. We have a motorcycle club here that goes for a ride over to Julian in a couple weeks. I have to be honest with you, I like to bike, so we have a motorcycle club, okay? Then we have Cars Ministry. Once every quarter, we have a group of guys that change the oil and work on some very minor things on women's cars in our church that don't know how to take care of their cars. And it's been a wonderful, successful ministry. We had one lady comes in, puts about 600 miles in her car every 3 months, but we found a fuel leak in her line, and it could have caught the car on fire, but because Tom takes care of that kind of stuff, we actually were able to take care of it. So if you're interested in that, it's a great father-son project also. Or father-daughter project, whatever we belong to play. In April, we got another men's thing that happens. I do cook dinner for you in May. We have a Man in the Mirror event. It's Friday night, Saturday. We have you out here by noon. We do a big old fatty steak fry, and it's good steak. It's ribeye steak. And I'll take care of you that, but you need to check out, see what's going on with that. Then we got a men's retreat coming up in October that my roommate from college is going to come out from Oklahoma to speak. He's the chaplain for the senior PGA. He's an amazing basketball player, has 3 orphanages in the Philippines, and wants to share that with you. You guys just, you know what? Come to that retreat. If you don't like it, I promise I will give you your money back from that retreat if you don't like what Tom shares with you. He's that good. It's absolutely amazing. So we got plenty of stuff happening here. We're here to help you to do what you can to involve you here at PFB. If you're a visitor here, thanks for coming, you guys. Hope you enjoy the cholesterol. We do our best around here to keep that up for you. So, listen, before we go any farther, I'm going to ask Greg to come on up here. I met Greg Haas here about, oh golly, I don't know, 20 years ago. And Greg has this passion for cars. And we went out to breakfast here about 2 months ago. And where are you? Come on, Greg. And he said, hey, I want to talk to you about something that Kiki and I really got a passion for. And so he took me out to breakfast. It was good. It was good. Took me out for breakfast, and we got talking about this. And I'm like, yeah, we got to do this. Because one of the things we do at PFB, if you're interested in ministry, we're like, yeah, do it. We'll help you get it going, because that's what church is supposed to be about plugging you guys in where you like to be plugged in, not forcing you into a mold that you're not a part of. That's what makes PFB survive. It's a fabulous church. We're glad you're here. So just before Greg gets to share with you, because I'm going to do that, Ken, come on up here for a second. Ken has a wonderful thing to share with you about Valentine's. If you guys don't have things set up for your special other for Valentine's Day, Ken is going to share with you just a second here about something wonderful that he has going on. Ken?
Men's ministry, right? Well, your job is to minister to your wives. Give you a great opportunity to do this. Every year, we at the church, through the marriage ministry, try and do something really special, a very special event for marriages. This year is particularly special because what we're going to be doing on Friday the 12th, Friday evening from 6 to 9, and then Saturday morning from 8 to 11, we're going to be joining in a nationwide Valentine's simulcast with Jimmy and Karen Evans. He is a phenomenal speaker. Marriage Today is their ministry, and they're going to be doing this nationwide simulcast. It's $35, fantastic bargain for you and your sweetheart, so you can bring her as a surprise or however you like. Friday evening, we're going to have a special gift for all the ladies, surprise gift, and Saturday morning, we're going to have a special gift for all of the couples. Friday night is going to be very special, fancy hors d'oeuvres, so that if you come hungry because you have to come right from work, it'll be almost like a little light supper kind of a thing. And then Saturday morning, we'll have a very nice continental breakfast. Plus, we're having special music by Juan and Nana Amaral, so just a lot of real special stuff. We want this to be a great special Valentine event, and then you can get in the mood for what you're going to be doing for your sweetheart on Sunday, which is actually Valentine's Day. So we're going to have tickets here available that you can buy if you want to avoid the rush of the tables in the foyer tomorrow. But after we're done, as you're dismissing, if you'd like to buy your tickets from either Guillermo or me, it will be available for that as well. So I hope to see all of you. It's going to be a really fun time.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks. Okay, great. Check that out, guys. Okay, Colts fans? 4. Oh my gosh. Vikings fans?
Oh, wait.
I know, that's what I do.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Okay. Shows you what I know. Okay, and if you're bored, come see me afterwards because we have a Super Bowl party at my house that you've got to go to. Okay? Don't tell my wife I invited you. But we have about 70 people coming over in the afternoon. The house is Carol's, the garage is mine. I put up like a 7-foot image on the wall in the garage with my sound system. It's got the black and white check floor. It's a lot of fun. And I'm going to do pulled pork and barbecue beef, so you got to come. So if you're interested, talk to me afterwards. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm done with it. Ladies and gentlemen, will you please give a big rowdy, let's go for it, Greg Haas!
Is this on now? Can you guys, everybody hear me? Good. Well, I'm just amazed that you guys got here. I've got a very good friend who's into microcars also, and when he showed up this morning, I had to ask him, did he come in his Amphicar? But glad you guys can make it here. We're going to have some fun things, but first I got to ask you, and show of hands, if you've all been back and looked at the cars, how many here have seen at least one car you've never seen before? Show. Okay, that's pretty much everybody. Okay, how about 2? 2 cars you've never seen before. Come on, be honest. Okay, 3? 3? 4? Well, okay, most of you guys have been to our house, so you've seen a few more. So, that's why we're here today. That's why we've gotten into these cars. They're amusing. I've got a good friend, TJ. Where are you? Right there. We go to car shows all the time. He's got a great 67 Camaro, 68 Camaro, 67 Nova, and we'll go in one of our cars and he won't park next to us because nobody looks at his cars. So that's why we're into these. So what we're going to do this morning is I'm going to give you a brief history, hopefully brief, of how I got into cars to begin with, and then we're going to try to do something special. Is we're going to actually restore a car today. I'm not going to make an F-15 disappear like that guy in Vegas, but we're going to try to restore a car today. So let's get at it here, because Jane told me to keep it short so you guys don't fall asleep. Well, it all started a long, long time ago when my parents, my mother and father, are here today. Bless their souls. And my mom always wondered, why are you into these cars? I mean, you got other things to do. You make them in your life. Well, I said, because I had good teachers. This is my mom and dad. My dad's driving his, 29 Chevy. My mom's in front of, I think, a 32 Ford. And that's how I'm sure that's how I got my start. They were just totally into cars. And they had me in 1955, my brother in 1952, who beat up on me all the time because he's so much bigger than me. And we grew up in San Bernardino in this house. And my parents were great because when I was little, I'd build models, and I destroyed them. I mean, I tried to do weird things to them, but they just let me build models. But I got to where I was about 12, and I got my first HO racetrack, the little tiny cars. Well, I kept adding track to it, adding track. A guy across the street sold me his collection of track. And you see the 3 windows in the front here, that used to be a patio. It was like 30 feet long, and they let me bring in planks, plywood, and all, and I built the biggest HO racetrack in San Bernardino. We had kids coming from all over just to race on this track. And the cool thing about it was, on the very back side, next to the wall, we had a 25-foot long straightaway. And there weren't too many tracks where you could put that controller down and hold it and see how fast your car would really go. Well, the only problem with that is you get down there, you got a little right-hand turn, and you could never slow down enough, and those cars would always just zoom off the end of the track and hit the wall. So we ended up putting a pillow there to catch them. Well, we had a bunch of kids over one morning, and one new little kid, and I still remember him, and it came to mind, why don't we do a drag race? Let's just drag race our cars and see who's got the fastest car. I had a little Batmobile that was just unbelievably fast. So I asked him, anybody want to race? And I said, I'll tell you what, let's race for pink slips. Don't listen to this mother. I was 12 years old, but we're going to race for pink slip. And this one little kid was standing there, he had his car, and I'd never seen him before. And I looked down and says, you want to race for pink slips? And he goes, okay. So I knew which side of the track was the faster track. I had no mercy on this poor little kid. So I put the Batmobile down there, he put his car down there, and we turned the transformer off. We both held our controllers down, and we turned that transformer on, and that Batmobile just took off, went off the end of the track into the pillow. And that's about the only time we ever did it, because I actually, when it was all over and said and done, I really felt kind of bad. This kid just shows up, and I raced him for pink slips, and just the psychological damage it probably did to that, that day. In fact, I can still see him running out, running across the front yard, running home with my Batmobile. So that's the only reason we quit doing it. I just couldn't take it. So I got out of cars and I got into bikes. I had an old beat-up Schwinn I rode everywhere. And one day I was up at Sage's parking lot, or in the Sage's department store, and I went into the bicycle section, and there it was. Stingray, purple, banana seat, sissy bar, 5-speed shift on the column. I said, man, I gotta have this bike. So I go back home, tell my parents, I found the bike I want. Let's go, but can we go take a look at it? So they take me up, and bless their hearts, they walk in and go, that bike is just beautiful. And my dad says, but let me show you something even better. So he took me over to the lawn and garden area and said, look at this. 3.5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton, front drive wheels, rear bagger. He bought me a lawnmower instead of the bike. I'm like, if if I knew back then what I knew now, I would have gone back the next day and traded it back in for 2 of those bikes. But I didn't want the wrath of my mom on me, so I started mowing lawns to pay for this bike. And it took all summer, but I eventually bought that bike. And there I am on the Stingray. I was out to impress the women at church or something. I don't know, but it had a banana seat on it, but I took the banana seat off and put a unicycle seat I had on it because this biker was going solo. So I wouldn't have to give rides to anybody. Well, that wasn't enough. I was in, next to Stater Brothers, there was a little bike shop. Walked in there and looked, I gotta have this for my bike. And I became the first easy rider. That was so hard to ride because every time you turned the wheel, the whole bike would lift up. It was just totally unstable, but that was my bike. But that wasn't enough. That was not enough. I looked at the old beat up Schwinn I had and I thought, you know, I'm going to make me a bike. Here I am 12 years old. I know my dad's got a welder, so I go out there and I start hacking this bike up to make this custom cruiser, and I actually made it. And this is my brother who is here today, and don't think he's a nice guy. He beat up on me all the time. He's so much bigger than me. But here he is on this bike. And the cool thing about this bike was the fork. That fork was easily 6 feet long. And the only problem with it, you turn the handlebars, and about 2 seconds later, the front wheel turns, so you had to plan ahead. But I built that thing. I ended up selling it to, I think I sold it to Polly Driggers, and I don't know whatever happened to the bike. But that was my first time I got into real customization. Now I do have a cheat sheet here because this is my first time doing this. So I continued mowing lawns, going up and down the street mowing lawns, until one day I was pushing my lawnmower back, and I think his name was Bruce. I'm pushing my lawnmower, and I looked over the side, and his garage door's open. There it was, 59 Austin Healey, British Racing Green. Oh, I think one part of it was still British Racing Green. The rest of it was kind of banged up and primered and all that. I went in that, he was out mowing his lawn, so I didn't have to sell there. But I went in and I asked him, hey, what's the deal with this car? He goes, I'm probably not ever going to do anything with it. And I said, do you want to sell it? Do you want to sell it? Now, I was like 15 at the time. He said, yeah, I'll sell it. And I think it was like $350. I'm thinking, $350, $350. Man, I only have to mow like 10,000 lawns to get that much money. But I said, okay, I will do it. Well, it came down to where I made enough money. I had $175 saved up. And I told my folks, I'm going to go up there this Saturday and give them a down payment on this Austin Healey. And they said, okay, do whatever you want. Well, Saturday morning came, I looked out the front door. He was just up the street a ways. The garage door was open, so I got my money. I ran up there, got into the gate, went to open up the gate, looked into the garage, and it was gone. And I'm like, excuse me if I start crying. It was a big, big bummer to me. I mean, he was there, and I walked in. I said, Bruce, what'd you do with the car? He said, oh man, I had some people come by that offered me a whole lot more money for it, and I had to sell it. And I'm like, oh man, I was just devastated. I mean, that was going to be with the love of my life. And I went back home just devastated. But about a week later, a good friend of mine, he had a Volvo P544. I don't know if you know those. They're the upside-down bathtub. Weird little cars. Well, a friend of mine at school had bought one for his girlfriend, brought it home. He paid $250 for it, brought it home, and could never get it started again. He even switched the spark plug wires around thinking that would help. I mean, and I said, well, you can't get it running. What are you going to do with it? He says, well, I got a towing company coming today to haul it away for $25. I'm like, $25? And I remember saying, will you take 27? And he goes, he thought about it and goes, yeah, I'll take 27 for it. But you can't have the Michelins that I bought for it. I'm going to try to sell those to somebody else. So I went up to buy this thing. He had the manual and all on it. And I used the manual. I got the spark plugs in the right spot. Went in there and the manual said you've got to pull the choke to start it. Pull that choke out, start it, nothing. And I'm like, oh man, what am I going to do? So I go out and look, and I'm checking the engine all out, not really knowing what I'm doing. But I noticed a shiny spot on the choke cable where it was slipping, in and out of a little holding bracket. So I pulled out my screwdriver, tightened that thing down, got in there, pulled that choke out. That thing started right up. I drove it we drove it all over the place. We went up dirt biking or dirt carring in it, and all over the place. That thing just ran like a top. My brother, he had a car, and I don't know why he painted it this color, but he was driving around in an old Willys military Jeep. My dad had bought 4 of them at one time, and he painted it purple. And today's a perfect example. What we used to do with this thing is at night, when it was raining and it was real cold and snowing up the mountains, we'd all pile into this Jeep and drive up to Forest Falls. It's about a 5-mile long road up to a dead end. And by midnight, if it's snowing, the snowplow guy had given up and gone home. And we'd put chains on this Jeep, we'd pile into it, go up, and we'd get up to the very top. 3 of us would climb out, get on our sleds, and we would sled down this road 5 miles while another guy followed us down in the Jeep. And we did that quite a bit. I think one time we had a broken arm or something like that, hitting the brick wall. Someone hit the brick wall, or the rock wall. But it came Christmas time. This is all kind of consecutive. Christmas time, after I bought the Volvo, we were doing this. We had our Christmas festivities on Christmas Eve, and it was raining. And we thought, let's do it. So we got Steve Driggers and I think his brother Robbie. We piled into this Jeep and took off at midnight, Christmas Eve, sledded down the road, had a ball. Driving back home, we're pulling into the driveway. My brother stops the car and says, "Greg, what's that?" And I'm like, "What's what?" And I look up, and there's my folks. They had gone up and they had bought that Austin Healey, knowing that I was going to go up and put a down payment on it. Knew the torment it gave me, and they gift wrapped that thing. That's my aunt and uncle who are now in Missouri. They gift wrapped it, put a bow on it, and that's the happy owner of his Austin Healey. Well, that was Christmas Day, showing it off. It was leak-proof with the tarp on it. But we finally, with my dad's help and all, we finally got that thing totally restored. And I drove that thing all through high school. We ended up putting a V8 in it. We never could get it to start. I think we pushed that car more than we drove that car to get it to run. So that started my love affair with cars, and it continued and got worse. Back then, Auto Trader was a magazine. I don't know if you guys, the young kids, Autotrader.com, where all the Mustangs are coming down, getting into their color and sliding backwards into the driveway. Back then it was a magazine, and it came out every Thursday, and I was there every Thursday. I knew when that was arriving at the 7-Eleven store, and I would get there and I'd go through and see if there was any deals. And one day I was thumbing through this thing, and I look and I go, "What is that?" It's a BMW Isetta. It was the weirdest looking little car. I'm like, I gotta have that. Where's that? It was in New Jersey. Oh, forget that. Well, I went over to a gentleman on Euclid Avenue. He had a bunch of cars, and I took the magazine over and I said, "Ed, you ever seen one of these?" He goes, "Come here." We walked over to one of his barns, and he opened it up, and there are 2 of them were sitting in there. I'm like, "Holy smokes, there's 2 of them." And I said, "Do you want to sell one of them?" And he ended up selling. I ended up getting both of them eventually, but he sold me my very first one and brought it home. And it was a mess. My daughters, Amber and Megan, who are here today also, they actually helped me lift the body off the frame so I could go ahead and start restoring this thing. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I worked at it with a lot of help from my daughters. I don't know if you've ever heard the term shop driving. That's when you're working on your car, it's not running, but it's like, okay, I gotta drive this thing. So you go out in the shop and sit there and act like you're driving, shop driving. Well, I learned that from my daughters. They love shop driving in my Isetta. And I thought, man, this is cool. My daughters are gonna grow up, they're gonna be into cars. We finally got it done. There it is. We don't have the sunroof on yet, but it was done. I thought it was a Friday afternoon. It was my day to pick up Andrea in junior high. So I drive up there early. She's nodding. I drive up there early and park right in front of the school. And I'm sitting there waiting for her. And pretty soon the bell rings and all these kids come out and they're all run to their cars, and all of a sudden, whoa, they all kind of migrate over, and all these kids are all around this car, except Andrea. She's nowhere around, and I'm thinking, was she detention for beating up a couple of older bullies on recess or something? But I was in my element. All these kids, we were giving high fives to all these kids, and it was my heyday. Well, they finally all kind of dispersed, got up and went home, and here comes Andrea walking around the corner. She remembers it. She comes walking out, and she's not happy at all. And I'm just thrilled. I'm thrilled. And she walks up to me and she says, "Patty, don't ever do this again to me." The next day, Steve Urkel made the little Izetta, the car that opens up from the front. He made it special on his television program. And what you were called Miss Urquette the next day.
Yeah.
In school, yeah.
Mrs. Urkel.
Miss Urkel, that was a nice memory. But so I thought, are my kids not going to be in the cars? Here I had two lovely daughters, and they're just not going to be in the cars. Well, Andrea got married getting close to 2 years ago, and I said, hey, can I at least supply the getaway car? And the little Crosley, the red and the black one back there, was the getaway car. But for her wedding, we painted it pink and green so she could drive away in it. We upholstered their names in the seats, and just a memory to last forever. Well, I drove it one time after that down to the store, and the heckling I got, I thought, never again. It's got to be put back to the red and black. So put it back to the red and black. And let's see. I think that's how I got into cars, and we're at today. So now what I would like to do is switch gears a little bit and let's get into the cars. You guys ready to get into the cars? See how a car is restored, Jay? Yeah. Jay. Okay. We're going to take a car that we're going to find. I'm going to explain how you find a car. If you want to restore a car, first you got to have one. Well, if you don't have one, you got to find one. And in my travels, I've found the best thing to do, like Jay, buy one that's already done. It's a turnkey system. But you usually pay kind of a lot of money for it. The next best thing is to find a project that somebody else has started and didn't complete it. Got all the parts, everything ready to go, and you get it for half the money that they put into this thing. Then another way you can do it is you can find a decent running original one and something that you can drive while you restore it, and you can enjoy it through the whole restoration. Or you can do it the way I do it. You go out and you find a total rusted piece of junk that's missing half the stuff and get it given to you. And then you spend 5 or 10 years trying to figure out where all the parts are to put it together. So that's the way I do it. So what we're going to do first off today is we're going to find a car. And I've heard that there's a car up in Kanab, Utah. I don't know if anyone here ever been to Kanab, Utah? I mean, it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. I mean, this is bad. This is bad place. And so we hear of 3 Izettas up in this field in Kanab, Utah. So we're going to go look at it. And sure enough, we find these 3 Izettas in Kanab, Utah. And I'm not joking, the fellow bending over it is a full-on polygamist. He's the owner of this car. He's got several wives. These are 4 of his boys. There were a bunch more kids running around, and it was a zoo. Well, so we wanted to buy this one that we're looking at, but he said, sorry, it's a package deal. But you buy this one, you get the other 2 for free. So we decided, let's get them. So we got them. This is actually the car that was up in Kanab, Utah. Look familiar? Same exact car up in Kanab, Utah. And the cool thing about this was, thank goodness, it was free. So you look at this thing, you think, hey, this ain't bad for free. It's got pretty much nothing. Oh, well, it's still free. I mean, it's still free. So let's figure out what we have to do to this thing. And what we're going to do, we're going to restore this car biblically. I've searched the scriptures for God to tell me what's the best way to restore a car. And the first thing we do is we start with the frame. And the fun thing about these cars, I mean, try doing this with a 57 Chevy. That's the frame, okay? That's the frame of this car. You don't need three buddies to come over and help you move it. You take it, and it's biblical. In Matthew 7, 24 and 25, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came, appropriately enough. The streams rose. The winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. And this is talking about the rock, Jesus Christ. But on this, the rock is the frame. So what we're going to do with this frame, we're going to take it and we're going to have a process done. I don't know if you guys know about it. It's called powder coating. It's not paint, it's a powder coat. And here's a part that's been powder coated. They strip it all down, and it's an electrostatic process. You have a gun, they hang it in a booth, they put a negative charge on this, a positive charge on this gun that just shoots a little mist out. But it keeps covering it all until every single part of this is covered, and then they bake it on. I mean, this is rock hard. I mean, you can't scratch. Well, you probably could scratch. Can I scratch? No, thank goodness. But that's what we do to the frame. And in fact, I stole my folks' gates one time. My dad would go out and paint the gate every year. Every year he's out there painting it. So they were gone sometime. I went and stole their gates and had them powder coated and put them back probably 10 years ago. And he still hasn't touched them. They still look as good as this. The rains can come, the rocks can come up and hit it, and it's going to last. So that's what you usually do to a frame. Then the next thing we're going to do, once the frame's done, we're going to do the engine. And I thought this was really cool. These aren't my regular glasses, okay? We're going to talk about the engine.
Did you get those in West Hollywood?
Okay, the disciples, a man had brought his kid to the disciples. He had a demon in him. He was jumping in the fire. He was jumping in the water. I can understand the water because you first jump in the fire, you definitely want to jump in the water and put yourself out. But this kid had a demon in him, and the disciples couldn't get this demon out of this kid. So the disciples came to Jesus in Matthew 17, 14 to 20. Then the disciples came to Jesus in private and asked, why couldn't we drive it out? I'm like, drive? Ooh, I like that. But drive the demon out. And he replied, because you have so little faith. I tell you the truth, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Well, this car, you had to be thinking about this car. This car is powered by a mustard seed. That's the engine. It's a 300cc, 4-stroke, single-cylinder engine. And surprisingly enough, every single part in this, you can buy here locally at a local bearing house to restore this. They have this new material out called Ultra Black. It makes gaskets. You can make every single gasket for this thing. This puts out 13 horsepower and will power this car down the road at close to 55 miles an hour. So if you've got faith of a mustard seed, you can say to this car, go from here to there, and it'll go. But that's about the smallest engine ever put in a car. So now we got the engine done, and here's the one I'm having a tough time with, is the body and paint. What are we going to do to get this body fixed and painted? Well, I'm going to read a scripture here. It's Matthew 5, 43 to 48. Love your enemies. Some of this stuff can be a real enemy. It says, you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. That's to both. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Not even the tax collectors, I don't think there are tax collectors here today, but even the tax collectors are doing that. And if you greet only your brothers, if you only greet your brothers here, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So what we got to do is we first got to find out what's wrong with this door. And I've got a sample here of a door that has multiple problems with it. I had it sandblasted and clear coated so it wouldn't rust anymore, but it's got major rust. I don't know if you all can see. It's got major rust. I mean, it's missing a hinge. It got dents. This has got a multitude of sins in it. It's got little sins. It's got big sins. But if you don't find them, if you don't strip it down and find all this stuff, you might paint over a sin, and it'll come back and haunt you later. The paint will crack, and you're going to have to redo it. You got to get down to the nitty-gritty, find out what's wrong, and fix them. And once you fix them, you can. This is a car I'm restoring for a fellow up in Helzburg. And once you fix them, you end up with something that is just about worth its weight in gold. But this door here was also stripped down to bare metal, all the dents taken out, and the cancer was removed and was restored. But that's the best way to restore something, is to find out the cancer and the problems that are with it. And sometimes you gotta strip down to bare metal to find what your problems are. But God can fix them, just like the restoration expert. I didn't do that. My restoration painter expert did that. But they can be fixed. Now, I've got to skip something because I forgot to bring it. We forgot to bring the wiring harnesses. Shoot. We had a rough time yesterday trying to haul all this stuff in yesterday with the rain. And it was pretty amazing that we got it all in. So we're going to skip the wiring harness, but what else I'll do anyway? Romans 8:5. Those who live according to the sinful nature have their minds set on what nature desires. But those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. The mind of sinful man is death, but mind of controlled by the Spirit is life and peace. The sinful mind is hostile to God. It does not submit to God's law, nor can it do so. Those controlled by sinful nature cannot please God. And what I had is I had a wiring harness. It was just a mess. I was going to pick it up, just a total disaster. Then I was going to have a wiring harness, a new one, with a wiring diagram that shows how easy it is to wire a car to control everything. But again, you get rid of the bad and get the good. Now, we've got the body done, the engine's done, everything's under control, but now we got the biggest thing we got to control, and that's when we're driving it down the road, you got to make sure it goes where you want it to go, and that's the steering. James 3 says, "Not many of you should presume to be teachers, my brothers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. If anyone is never at fault in what he says," well, except you, Dave, I'm sorry. "He is a perfect man. He is a perfect man, able to keep his whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal just a little bit. Or take ships as an example. Although they are large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very, very small rudder, wherever the pilot wants it to go. Likewise, the tongue that we have in our mouth is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small, small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person, it sets the whole course of his life on fire, and it is self set on fire in hell." Well, these things steer, and boy, I can't believe we forgot the steering gears. There's too many parts to restore a car. You shouldn't get into this. But the steering is a small little bar. It's got little tiny bushings in it, and it's just a small little part of the car. But without those bushings to keep it solid and not move around, those wheels will wobble all over, and you won't be able to control it. Just like your wife, you can't control your tongue. You have a very, very tough time controlling your life. Now we're going to get into some fun stuff. Well, what I think is fun. You guys might not think it's fun, but I do. Kind of. Is the exhaust. And this is my favorite. Glenn, you're going to love this. The exhaust on every car has to be sit and take out and pushed out the back of the car unless you've got one of those new electric cars. But we don't care about those today. But Nebuchadnezzar, I don't know if I'm sure you've all heard of Nebuchadnezzar. He had built himself a golden idol and required everybody in his nation to bow before this idol. And if they wouldn't bow before this idol, they were sent into the fiery furnace and burned up. And this is one story about 3 men. It says, then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, of his facial expression was altered towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These were 3 guys who would not bow to this golden image. So he answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. He commanded certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast him into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes, and they were cast into the midst of the fiery furnace. Well, for this reason, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire even slew the men who carried Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. The fire came out and consumed them also. Well, but these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, the king, was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to his high officials, was it not 3 men we cast bound into the midst of the fire? They replied to the king, certainly, O king. He said, look, I see 4 men loosed and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm. And the appearance of the 4th is like the son of the gods. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. He responded and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out in the midst of the fire. These guys were, because they had God in their hearts, they were able to withstand the fire. So there's a coating on the exhaust systems. This is an exhaust system on a Mini Cooper. And you can tell that this thing's kind of been through a lot of fiery furnaces. These things get extremely hot, and you can see how they rust, they corrode, and all because of the really, really great temperature changes that these things go through. Well, if you're going to put a new exhaust system on your Isetta, I have these things reproduced. This is a brand new one. And in order to protect this, we put a coating on it, which I consider the coating of God, because it will let anything happen to this exhaust. It's a ceramic coating. They put it on kind of the same as a powder coat, but it totally seals off the surface and will withstand temperatures up to, I think 3,000 degrees. And 10 years of operation, this muffler will still look the same because it's protected. Just like Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego were protected, we protect the exhaust system on our cars. Now the one you've been waiting for is the interior. Now this is really cool. Ever heard of King Solomon, the King Solomon mines? And he had mines of gold and all. He was a very, very wise king. You probably remember the story where there were 2 women who brought 2 children to him. One was dead and one was alive. And the one woman who had the dead child said that the other child was hers. So King Solomon, in all his glory and his wisdom, said very simple, let's cut this one in half and give one to both of you. And the one lady said, that's fine, I'll take that. And the other lady said, no, please don't harm my child. Let the other woman have my child. And that's when Solomon said, you are the true mother of this child. So this is the wisdom of Solomon. Well, another cool thing, he was born about 1,000 years before Christ. And this is stretching it a bit, but it's still pretty fun. King Solomon has made himself a sedan chair. Now, you would think King Solomon would have made himself a convertible chair, drive a convertible, but no, he just had a regular old sedan. From timbers of Lebanon, he made its post of silver, its back of gold, and its seat of purple fabric, with its interior lovingly fitted out by the daughters of Jerusalem. Well, what we have is, sometimes you're lucky enough to find a car that's got the original seat in it with the original upholstery on it. And this is something BMW, this is a factory BMW seat. It's got a weave pattern, and guys try to duplicate this. They'll have a weave that is textured one way and is totally smooth the other way. And these guys really are sticklers about just that little aspect of the interior. So we can actually, and there's people out there, we can take this seat and we can reupholster it with the same exact material. Again, the seat frame's all been powder coated and upholstered with the same exact weave. They still make this material. You can get it available, and pretty much for any car you're going to restore, you can get the material that was factory original for your car. Or you can do kind of what I like to do, is I like to mix it up a little bit. They have this new fabric out now called Ultra Leather. You can clean it with just about anything you want to clean it with. It will withstand anything. And you can do a little customized job on your seats. Okay. This is going in a green Isetta of ours. It's all ultra leather. You can clean this with 409. Not like regular leather. And it'll last. It's soft. Afterwards, if you guys want to come up and check them out, feel free to come up. And don't worry about getting it dirty, because it can clean real easy. And we got this idea from a new commercial Volkswagen put out, and we looked in the back seat, and the back seat was done like this. So I went to my upholstery guy and says, hey, let's see if we can do an Isetta with the same technique on it. So that's interior. And finally, we have a finished, we've pretty much covered everything. And now we're going to show you a finished car. This is one we did a few years ago. And again, about these cars, whenever we go anywhere, John agrees. He's got a couple 427 Fats. He's got a Porsche. Anywhere he goes with Isetta, he's a light on a hill. Matthew 5, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. And this is the finished product you end up with. This is one of our favorites. It has won first place at the National Microcar Show in Golden, Colorado, and that could be turned into this exact same car. Just like any of you here, if you sometimes feel like you're out in the field in Kanab, Utah, freezing cold, you feel like that is your life, you're owned by a polygamist. You can let the great restorer come get you, take you, and if you let him and follow all the steps that you can go through and let God handle your life, He can turn you into something like that.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Listen, if any of you guys want to talk to Greg afterwards, he's going to stick. We're going to stick around for a while to clean this mess up. These gorgeous vehicles back up. Like I said, come on up and check the stuff out that he has. Ask him questions about it. He'd love to share with you. He told me a story about this one that you were driving where,
We're coming back from the Michael Carnation
and somebody pulls up in a
in a M-Class BMW.
big old M-Class BMW, flashed their lights at him, so he pulls over. The guy goes, "I'll give you $100,000 for it right now."
Yeah.
He says, "No thanks. Too much
No thanks.
fun."
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not about the money. He
That's right.
enjoys what he does, and the product is fabulous. And one of the reasons why Greg wanted to get together today is like, if there's any of you guys are interested in getting together to talk about these kind of cars, and just about life and all, he'd love to spend time with you guys. And like we have in that one sheet of paper, some different groups to get together. He'd love to get another group started. If you're interested, talk to Greg afterwards. In the back on the table where you guys sign in, there's also a little pad that if you're interested in things that are happening here at the church, events, ministries, we'd love to keep you. We will not bug you. We'll just send you some emails, stuff like that, so you know what's going on. Keep you in touch with it all. If you don't have a church to worship at, I'd love for you to come here. We have an 8:30 service that's kind of traditional style. The 9:45 service is kind of contemporary blend. It's a little lighter, contemporary, but it's a little